Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and on this episode, we have an amazing guest that my guess is if you're just a casual music listener, you know who you like, but you don't go much deeper into the weeds as to who's behind it, who plays on the album, so on and so forth, you probably won't recognize this gentleman's name. His name is Robert Margouleff, and he goes way back in the music business. And when I say way back, I'm talking back in the early 70s, around there. Although his training is very classical and very formal, he is an early innovator of the Moog synthesizer, and in fact collaborated with none other than Robert Moog back in the early days. So this guy knows the synthesizer industry, and especially Moog synthesizers, inside and out, and was an early adopter and user of those machines. In fact, he and a friend of his by the name of Malcolm Cecil worked together in getting synthesizer music out there for everybody to see. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Again, Robert was a early collaborator with Robert Moog, the inventor of the Moog synthesizer. I pronounce it Moog. Some people say Moog. He went on to work with Andy Warhol, of all people, including co-producing Chow Manhattan. And who doesn't love our Andy Warhol? Robert then went on to purchase his own Moog Series 3 C synthesizer and became a renowned expert on the use of it. And back in those days, those things were very sensitive, very... I'll use the word unstable, but I don't mean that in a negative way. They were just very sensitive to work with, and Margouleff knew how to manage all of that. So he became a much sought after person, not only for his gear, but for his expertise on that gear. He and Malcolm went on to work, or actually formed their own band called TONTO's Expanding Headband. Very forward type of bleeding edge type of band in synthesizer music. This led them to working with none other than Stevie Wonder. Now get this, they were just very, very intimately involved in 4 of Stevie Wonder's albums. It was Music of My Mind, Talking Book, Inner Visions, and Fulfilling This's first finale. Now, you may not necessarily know what all's on those albums, but from those albums came the song Superstition. I know you've heard that. You Are the Sunshine of My Life, Higher Ground, and Boogie on Reggae Woman. Just some of Stevie's best music ever, and Robert Margouleff had a lot to do with that sound. He went on to produce Devo's Freedom of Choice album, landmark album there, and he worked with people like Paul Rogers of Bad Company, Jeff Beck, Little Feat, the late Dave Mason, who we just recently lost, Robin Trower, the Doobie Brothers, David Sanborn, Quincy Jones, the Isley Brothers, Stephen Stills, and many, many, many others. To say that Robert Margouleff is a legend would be an understatement. But he's also an author, not just a music producer. He's a renowned boatman. And in this author category, he has recently written and releasing his book called Shaping Sounds. It's his life story, very deep, very detailed, very informative, warts and all type of book, and those are the kind I like to read. And I highly recommend that you get this book for your reading library. I listened to the book because it was an early release and the hard copies weren't out yet, and it was given to me, and I fortunately had a lot of windshield time, so I got to listen to the book in Robert's own voice, which is pretty cool. It's as if you yourself are sitting there listening to him tell his story, much like how it is on this interview. So I highly recommend, if you can afford it, get both the hard copy and the audio book, because you'll want the hard copy to just look through the pictures, all that kind of thing, and the audio version so you can hear Robert tell it himself. And While I'm at it, as always, I ask that you hit like. And if you're not already a Boomerocity subscriber, just hit that subscribe button. I'm not going to charge you for it. And please share this interview and any of our other interviews with your music loving friends because I think they'll like this kind of stuff. And we're doing it so people can enjoy their favorite artist or maybe somebody they've heard about or maybe somebody new. Hear their stories so you can hear it from their own mouths and in their own words. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I hope are many more interviews to come with the great legendary Robert Margouleff. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Well, howdy.
Man, what a rarity. A person in the music business who is early. So
Yeah, I like being prompt. I'm here working on animating some of the pictures for my book. I'm playing around with ChatGPT and a few others of stills of Billy on a horse, Billy Preston on a horse. I'm having the time of my life. I'm loving it. Well, technology drives the art, and
that's right.
the more you jump into it, things unfold. Uh, AI is never going to go away.
Yep.
It's a new way of thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to learn how to embrace it in some kind of peaceful way. I mean,
Yep.
AI is going to do marvelous things in medicine. It's going to do marvelous things in a certain amount of, um, I think as a writer, there are things that it can do, although it also can go over the edge easily.
Yeah.
And I think in music, it's here to stay. And I'm not entirely sure how how that's going to work. Uh, they're doing stuff with it, but AI looks backwards, and I wonder how soon it's going to think about jazz, which is totally unstructured, filled with vibrato and motion, and how that's going to function because jazz has always been very interactive kind
Mm-hmm.
of performance
And unpredictable.
and unpredictable. But the unpredictable part is what we really love more
Mm-hmm.
than anything. What makes it wonderful is the unpredictability
Mm-hmm.
of the performance. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's why we like live music
Yeah.
because it is unpredictable and it's filled with rubato where it speeds up and slows down. And in classical music, the conductor comes out on stage. He looks like a penguin with a stick, and he walks to the podium and he raises the stick and he controls the speed. And when the orchestra speeds up or slows down, it he uses the stick, and the whole orchestra suddenly acts as one, and it's moving slowly or faster or louder or softer or more passionately or deeper vibrato. Uh, as a kid, I was in music school and I had the privilege of singing in a choir called the Schola Cantorum, which
Mm-hmm.
was a choir, a professional choir that was used. Basically, it was created for the use of the New York Philharmonic,
Right.
and I can remember singing in Carnegie Hall, and to say, "What's this little Jewish boy doing singing in Carnegie Hall?" But I never, uh, I never imagined uh, that I would be there like that. But
Mm-hmm.
there I was, and I had the opportunity to face the conductor instead of seeing his back because I was in the choir. And I can remember Leonard Bernstein uh, conducting, and he could conduct with his face, and the orchestra would follow the passion of his facial movements.
My goodness.
So it was an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you think about that, and then you think about AI, uh, it's not sequential music. It's not necessarily anchored to one tempo like a drum machine would be, for example.
Hmm.
But we're in a we're in a very interesting space. But with AI, the fear is that you're negotiating with a vending machine on one
Yep.
level,
Or
but
do you hit it on the side, you know?
yeah, maybe you get 45 cents back
Yeah, and a
uh,
candy bar.
for the candy bar. But there is that in it where people are recirculating already processed music again and again, or processing somebody else's music utilizing AI, and we get this kind of really homogenized AI slop, as I call it. And instead of posting on Spotify one song that you slave over for a couple of months, writing the poetry and the thing, and suddenly you're writing 20 songs a week and filling up the space with garbage
Yep.
that doesn't really relate to anything other than you stimulating the algorithm to get a few cents per play.
Yep.
And that is the fearsome negative aspect of it. But, like I say, technology drives the art, even, from the beginning of the concept of recording.
Hmm.
And uh, there's going to be some good to come out of it.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of gymnastics. Usually we attach an instrument to our face or to our hands, and we have a sort of physical connection. Uh,
Hmm.
but this is a new way of making contact. It's not necessarily negative, but
Right.
it's a new way of communicating. But I uh, I really wonder, what's music gonna sound like in 20 years? You
Yeah.
know?
After we're gone, you know. But
Yeah,
well,
well,
you know, but to your point about jazz, though, I wanted to throw this out at you because first of all, I'm not at all surprised you're playing with Chat GPT because I mean, from your book, it's clear that you've been kind of on the bleeding edge of technology and music and the arts anyway. So, I'm not at all surprised to get you doing that. But when it comes to jazz, I mean, when you think about it, or what I've been told, correct me if I'm wrong on this, music is mathematics. And if you were to take every known jazz recording up to, a cutoff point, let's say yesterday, and you were able to load it all into an AI system, an AI house, and it analyzed every song ever recorded under the jazz label, and assuming all the music is properly categorized as jazz. Do you think, I mean, first of all, we know musicians borrow from everything and everybody. So, some lawsuits have been known
we're
to
we're
happen as a
we're
result.
influenced. We're definitely immersed in our own lives, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where the inspiration comes from.
exactly. But if AI, the machine, were to take all known jazz stuff and say, all right, within this, there's a range of patterns that we see, length of time, tempo changes, whatever. In time, do you not think that it would be able to kind of spit out something somewhat palatable under the jazz
Well, I would
genre?
more say vomit than spit.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that jazz is a very unique thing. It doesn't, there's certain things that are the same in all pop music.
Hmm.
One thing, for example, 8-bar phrases.
Hmm.
Okay. There's certain scales uh, that artists tend to write it, like Stevie Wonder liked to write in E minor a lot.
Hmm.
Why? It's all black notes, easy to touch the keyboards
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah,
Uh,
Billy Vera is the same way.
yeah, so There are a lot of there's a lot of reasons we make music the way we do, but I think that listening to jazz or listening to Charlie Parker or any of the great jazz pianists and so forth, Chuck Corea, all these
Hmm.
guys are doing some Lyle Mays, are doing things that are unique, and people want to see that the difference every time. I think
Yeah.
that's why pop music is really becoming the place where we begin to see the playground act of is it live performance?
Hmm.
Because it's not going to be the same the next time. And what you're
Exactly.
looking at is unique in the moment. And
Yep.
a record is, okay, but it has other facts and limitations and storage issues that govern and help the music create a certain vibration, much like analog recording versus digital recording, whereby the record has a different character and feeling because of the
Hmm.
medium itself. Uh, think about where we've come from, like Benny Goodman or Mitch Miller, or just in sort of big band music, Benny Goodman, right? Bing Crosby, who really changed the way singing and live performance worked because originally it was the hall that really affected the music. If there were no
Hmm.
microphones, the hall itself was the instrument that you inhabited. And the orchestra, classical orchestra, or a pop band like a Glenn Miller or whatever, Benny Goodman, and you'd say, well, I really want to see this at Carnegie Hall because the hall acoustics are particularly good for this kind of instrument or that kind of instrument. But I would use another concert hall for like music and brass and stuff. Or now in the
Right.
studios, we would start to uh, utilize different studios. Like I would go to a studio if I knew a certain studio if I knew I was going to be recording strings versus a rhythm section, for example.
It
But
has kind of a certain patina, each place does, right?
yeah, it brings a certain patina, a feeling. And
Hmm.
what happened was what what happened to Bing Crosby? What happened to Bing Crosby, and what really sort of changed the recording of the concept of how we record things is when the microphone came on the scene and turning audio into electricity, basically. Uh, Bing would go up to the mic and he'd sing this far from the microphone. And the voice would become very close and very personal, as I call it, confessional. It's the way I
Hmm.
recorded Stevie with Malcolm, right? With a close feeling. But the thing that made it so magical and different is that the voice, like this, was as
Hmm.
loud as the entire orchestra. You could
Yeah.
make that voice louder than the entire orchestra. And
Hmm.
once we started rearranging reality like that, the live performance slowly took on a different view because the recordings we were constantly uh, rearranging the audio,
Hmm.
changing the perspective of things. And finally, in 1972 by Cracky, uh, there was a thing called stereo quadraphonic sound.
Quadraphonic. Yeah.
Yeah, you were a little tyke when that happened.
Oh no, I was a teen by then, man. I,
Yeah,
I'm
just at the
I'm
right age.
66.
Boy, you're
I'm a
really old. I'm
I
85
feel
year
it.
I'm 85 years old.
I
And
know, man, and
and
you're
I
you're
tell you,
looking great at that. I just lost
yeah,
my dad, and he was 89. You know,
yeah, well,
so.
I sleep at night in a pickle jar, and that's the reason. As they say, I'm well preserved. I just got me a new car. I've been tooling around on the freeway. I went up to Apple Valley, 100-mile drive. I really enjoyed myself. But going back to the thing is that, you know, with a full orchestra, on stage, they'd have one or two microphones, and then Bing would go up and sing close, and all the girls would say, "Oh, he's standing right next to me. He's making my heart pound. I want to touch him. I want to be close to him." It brought that kind of a closeness to the
Mhm.
music. And then, of course, we started adding more microphones. And then we got to quad, which was an interesting experiment. It was an experiment originally by a company called Sansui, and they
Mhm.
developed a system called QS. And the English folk rock bands, I think the Beatles' one album was mixed in quad. But
And the
it
Who.
was it was Decca and RCA and people like that in London, and the English were really sort of playing around with the concept. It didn't work for public because once you left the quad medium on tape and tried to get that into the grooves, it wasn't as successful, and you had to own a special cartridge in your player, and you also had to add another stereo amplifier for the back image. But
Hmm.
what it did for me uh, is basically using it as a tool in the control room for performance, where I could bring a quad mix. And what I did with Malcolm and I did with Stevie was to create quad mixes in the control room. We tried it on the disc with the Superstition. We tried to mix that in quad. It was beautiful on tape on the quad, 4-track player, but the grooves, it just really wasn't as in your face and as much separation as I wanted. But it became an incredibly valuable tool in the term of creating music, where we could put Devo or Stevie or Billy or whoever I was working with in the studio and bring them into the control room, where the control room became the concert hall, and the artists and the creators occupied the same space as the music. That was very different than saying, proscenium march here. I'm in the third person. I'm looking at this band sawing away on the stage in their stretched out t-shirts and their ripped pants and stuff, honking away in front of you and doing unpredictable things that fascinate you. But to be able to take that creation and put it around you with the background vocals behind you and the clavinet over here and a guitar over here and the drums in the space and the lead vocal up really close in your face. And then now with Dolby Atmos having object-oriented audio, where we can place a sound exactly where we want to have it inside a total sphere. Now,
Hmm.
it's it's easy to make it a gimmick, but if you conceive the music with the idea of having a sonic space like that, then you
Hmm.
can use the placement of where a sound is coming from as an artistic tool. And that's what we were doing in the studio. When we got done in the end, of course, it came out as stereo, but it gave me the chance and the artist a chance to really see how this clavinet part and this guitar part, how they're talking to each other. We gave a sense of directionality and a kind of a concept, which also helped the creation of the recording. I mean, listen to the stuff we did with Stevie and Billy too later on. You can hear how simple the arrangements really were and how dry and close they were, because I wanted to have this, not that. So
Hmm.
the quadraphonic became for me uh, a creative element in the control room, which is
It makes
different.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works.
By the way, where are you clicking in from? I forgot to ask you that on the front end there.
I sort of live in the lint of the belly button of Hollywood, California.
Okay.
I'm virtually at the corner of Vine Street and Hollywood and
Huh.
Sunset Boulevard. I'm right
Hmm.
there. Where are you?
I'm in the Smoky Mountains way down south. I'm up.
Well, I love
I'm
your
up.
wallpaper.
Yeah, I thought you might. So, well, I love the book. The book was I actually listened to it as opposed to reading. Now, I'm more of a reader, but because of schedule and such, I had a lot of windshield time to where I could really listen to, your book and kind of let it sink in a little better than reading, because of that windshield time. And I was fascinated. I, I mean, please don't take offense, but your name didn't ring a bell. But by golly, when I started listening to your story, and especially when you started getting into the business and such, I was blown away about how much of the soundtrack of my youth and my so-called adulthood you've impacted with your work behind the scenes. So thank you for that, by the way,
Oh, you're
for all
welcome.
that
But
great music.
yeah, it really. I originally wanted to be a filmmaker, and
Mm-hmm.
the story of Edie Sedgwick sort of did it for me. I mean, that film Chow Manhattan, which I produced and directed a bit of, but the living in the psychedelic end of the '60s into the '70s, and the psychedelic world that was New York, and the steamy streets and the use of a lot of psychedelic drugs during that time and other substances and the New York underground. I decided I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make a film about that and make the first above ground underground movie. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I discovered the synthesizer. Before that, I was a musician without an instrument. I knew I would never be a great opera singer, as much as I went to music school and studied opera and voice and was in the Schola, sing with the New York Philharmonic. I knew I would get that far, but I knew I wasn't another Corelli or Caruso, and I would never
Right.
find myself in a pair of tight pants and a funny hat, standing in the front of an opera house singing "O Solo Mio" and hiding behind a tree and stuff, you know. Uh, I knew I would never go there, and I knew I would, although I could get by on a harpsichord or a piano and stuff, and I knew that that wasn't my instrument either. I was sort of at that stage of my life, I was sort of kind of wondering, I have this in my head, but how do I express it? Uh, and when I found the synthesizer, I found my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what carried me forward into music more than I left filmmaking behind, although I'm quite an accomplished photographer, uh, where my grit really took hold was to be able to perceive the world around me in a unique way in my POV, and to be able to express my work by getting real artists who are talented to perform to the limits of their potential.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I found my voice. And my synthesizer took me there, where I could create sound that did not exist in the real world at all. They were not musical instruments like a clarinet.
Right.
Although Steve, when we were working with Belk and I just started working with Steve, and he came into the studio and saw TONTO. And he tried playing a bunch of chords on the keyboard. And he says, guys, Malcolm, Malcolm, what's wrong with this thing? I think it's broken. It only plays one note at a time. And Malcolm, in his wisdom, said, yes, Stevie, it's like a trumpet or a saxophone. It only plays one note at a time, one event at a time. If you want two events at a time, you have to use two keyboards, two controller, voltage control. It could be drums, could
Mm-hmm.
be a lot of different things that change voltage. What was Tonto? Tonto was the original Euro rack. It was instruments and modules from dozens of these baby developers like Moog and ARP and Surge and a whole bunch of other people who started building stuff in there, but stuff in their garage and stuff. And there were all these little tiny people all making different, an octave on an ARP synthesizer plus or minus 5 volts. The same thing on a Moog module, 6 volts. So eventually we had to figure out a way, because what Tonto is the original neo-timbral orchestra. And what we were looking at in 1971 and 72 was the desire to be able to use the instrument to perform live. Uh, but Tonto had other limitations. It was went completely bonkers if the temperature changed or you
Yeah.
just turned no, there was no memory. So if you got the sound, you had to flee to the sound immediately and use it because it'd be gone in 15 or 20 minutes. The whole thing was like very unstable, sensitive to heat, sensitive to motion.
Not very
And
mobile either, was it?
no, well, we had handles on the carrying cases. That we call that. That was making it mobile, but it was very fleeting. And when we worked with Stevie, which was really the sort of the genesis of, we had our album, which Steve heard, and that was what brought him to us. Uh, but the music, if you listen to those records, you'll see how really simple they are. There's no big waterfalls, no big string synthesizing the past. Every voice was a simple single voice. So when you hear the thing, the only thing that was like polyphonic might have been the keyboard, the Rhodes, the piano, or the clavinet. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, all the other stuff was simple voices that combined a variety of wave forms that were unique to that time. If you went back the next day and turned the synthesizer on, the sound wouldn't be there. It'd be something slightly different. You could boing yourself inside one part of the sound and out the other and never be able to go back. So when we got the sounds we wanted, we had to push the red button then and
Mm-hmm.
there. And Steve loved that. And I think the energy went in both ways. I mean, we were called associate producers by Steve, but we were really his teammates. I don't know what the labels mean really, but I do know this, that it was when the three of us got together in the studio, we were alone, especially through the talking book and into fulfilling this in that space. There was a very bright spark of light, and
Mm-hmm.
we changed the world and
Well,
music.
when I was reading that part, I know that eventually, there was some disappointment with that whole relationship there, but did I guess the one question I ask, I'm a bit of an empath, so I kind of put myself in your shoes on a lot of this stuff, and imagining how I might feel in certain things. When you were writing this book, did it resurrect feelings and thoughts and memories that you had forgotten about because one thing leading to another, or
Yeah, it
had
was
you
a
already pretty
it was a
much?
constant unwinding. It was a conscious unwinding, but it always first would think about the place. Like I can remember the stairway down to Electric Lady, the narrow
Hmm.
stairway off of 8th Street, and how you'd walk out 8th Street and there'd be all these garbage pails down the road with the chains holding the lids and people sitting on the trash cans busking and making music and the trash in the streets and feeling trapped in the city without a car. You know, you only had a taxi cab or the subway to move
Hmm.
around. And those sweaty days in August, or media, Steve had a very active memory. We were uh, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and he said, I was talking to Steve about recording living. I said, Steve, let's talk about living for the city. Well, the first thing he said was, this is 50 years later. He said it was raining. Okay. So, you have memories of place. And once I started to think about where I was, the stories came flowing through. It took 2.5 years to write that book.
Wow.
I had to be careful not stepping on anybody's toes and stuff.
That was going to be my next question. Any feedback at all? I mean, I know the book doesn't come out until next month, but what anybody kind of sniffing around wanting to know, hey, Robert, did you say this or anything like that?
Yeah, all I can say is, I only can share the feelings, and my close experiences. Uh, when you're in those kind of situations, it's very hard to listen to the sound of your own wheels. When you're inside the act, it's a kind of a sensual, sexual kind of thing. You don't think about your moves in bed with your wife or your lover or whatever. You know, you're not thinking about the moves. Now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. No, the act is totally impulsive, and that's like jazz music. The
Mhm.
act is impulsive. We don't know where that piano player is going to take the thing next. It is a unique experience. And I think part of what made Stevie's music so intensely personal was its rubato. I mean, if he never, we never did stuff with click tracks, which in a way militarized our pop music. Not only
Mhm.
did we have a song form of 8 bars of this and the 16 bars to that, then repeat the first 8 bars again, and then chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, verse, bridge, fade away at the end, or now the latest things just stop. But there is a song form there as much as the string quartet has a song form. Beethoven's string quartet or Bach cantata or whatever. Everyone there is a song form, and now with electronica, where it's going, is those song forms are going to go away, and we don't need to consider a pop song 3 minutes anymore. Why did we have the 3 minute pop song? So we could really, 3.5 minutes is all we could really get on a piece of lacquer, a 78 record. So we suddenly ended up, well, oh, our attention span is 3.5 minutes. Now, of course, our attention span of the young kids is a nanosecond,
Yeah,
but which I do think is a problem. I think
yeah.
that I went to I think it was the NAM convention. We had dinner at one of those restaurants out there in Anaheim, and we went in there, and there was a family at the table with like 4 or 5 kids, and they were all doing this,
Yeah.
you know, not talking to each other.
Yeah.
I think that I really approve of the fact of not letting kids touch these things too
Yep.
early.
I agree with you. I
I
really do.
think I think that we have to let people realize their own self-image and their own selves without being constantly stimulated by this this stuff. I think that it's truly dangerous.
Well, with
If
the
we,
technology being what it is, too, things become so commoditized so quickly that I remember one of the first interviews I did after I launched Boomerocity was with Sam Andrew of Big Brother and the Holding Company. And he told me, he goes, Randy, you got to remember, we were creating this stuff then. There were no Mel Bay books to go buy to tell us how to play a hard solo or something. We were inventing it as we went along. He goes, now you have schools that crank out 500 graduates that can play Hendrix as good as Hendrix, and that kind of thing. And I think that that's part of the problem with the industry today. And I don't know if we could ever go back to it, is that sense of discovery as a listener, or as that sense of creating something beautiful as a creator, and it being something new, unique, and appreciated. When it's released, it's an event, instead of just part of that cacophony of noise that's out there in the ether.
you know,
It's sad.
we've had music for thousands of years. It's not going to go away,
No.
you know, but it's going to be different. And some of it's going to be good, and a lot of it's going to be rubbish.
Hmm.
And the stuff that's good will still stick to the wall. The rest of
Yep.
it, not so much. There's great classical music being written now. There's great
Hmm.
electronica performances being done now. We've come a long way from Bartok and Luciano Berio and some of the more modern theremin, for example, in inventing new instruments that are part of a part of electronica that exists only in sounds only exist in space. They're not acoustical at all. And
Mm-hmm.
we're learning a new way to talk to music. I'm not sure all of it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it's going to be there one form or another. Is it a good thing that a kid 16 years old could sit at the kitchen table with his iPod or a laptop or whatever and write music where there is Dolby Atmos, where you can put a point source and say, I want the sound to come from here because it's going to be a surprise. You won't expect it to have a sound come from behind you like a call or a horn call, where you might
Mm-hmm.
in an audience put something behind the audience to announce the sound that could then come like this and move
Yep.
into a space. There's a lot of things you have to sit down and conceive. You write for the instruments you have in front of you. Now, Bach, for example, we say music for keyboards because the keyboard we know as a piano wasn't invented when Bach was writing his music. And if he had to write music for organ, he had to have like four slave boys down in the basement of the church pumping the
Mm-hmm.
bellows because there's no electricity. How do you make the wind for an organ? You have to do it by hand in
Mm-hmm.
that time. So he wrote music in a way that he could perform it uh, on a clavichord or a harpsichord later on, but was an instrument he could have in his living room, which he could write and have realize the geometry of what he was doing. But the music fits the time.
Yeah.
And right now, our culture is going through major upheaval, as you well know. And I think it's evoking a lot of feelings in people that haven't been touched by these kind of feelings ever. I have friends who say, one of these days, there's a missile's going to land in LA. It's going to come 6,000 miles from Iran, and they're going to hit somewhere downtown LA with a rocket, and that's going to change everything.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
and
agree.
I think that once we learn that we can be touched and we're not just isolated by distance, uh, maybe we got to talk to people through song and through music
I
to
agree.
help them make some peace with
Mm-hmm.
themselves.
Yep.
Uh, I think we're in serious trouble with the government, and it's not going to be solved easily. I just hope and pray that it's not going to be violent, but
Yep. Same here.
it's getting there, and
Yep. And not
you know,
just here, around the world.
yes,
It's
yeah,
and
the whole nature of how we conceive, how we communicate with one another. We're no longer separated by countries where there are boundaries here and boundaries there, because the computer is able to go everywhere.
mm-hmm.
Your bank account, your cash machine could be, being audited in Ireland, and you're doing your writing and typing, and there's some guy in India figuring out how to give you directions and how to manipulate the thing. It's the banks don't recognize the borders.
Right.
They're everywhere. You
Yep.
want to use your charge card in London? You want to use your charge card in Paris? You want to go to Moscow and use your card? You can do it. It
Yep.
denies the whole concept of this provincial thing of character and specialized languages in special parts of the world. It's starting to gnaw away at that kind of
Yep.
thing. What do we have
Totally
that's
agree.
really, really universal and portable? Music.
Yep.
And that is where I live, and that's where I want to be.
Well,
So,
it creates a psychological mile marker in our mind. That's part of the reason why I do what I do, being I was born in 59, teenager in the 70s and all that. And, we're starting to peel away a little bit at a time. Fewer and fewer of the artists that impacted us, are alive. And that's scary. But again, watching you saying about it being having an impact and all that, I was struck. And I've mentioned this to several artists I've talked to since I watched this documentary, but the Chuck Berry documentary that was endorsed by his estate and his family. I was watching some of the video from back when he was just coming out. He saw the black kids and the white kids dancing in the aisles together. There was no combat, there was no fighting. You wouldn't know that there was a race issue in those days by watching the kids and being unified by, Johnny B. Good or something. And,
So
I'd
what
like
the
to
hell?
think that that
So
could
what the
still
hell
happen.
happened? So what the hell
The
happened?
adults got in the way, man.
Those adults, man, they tell you something. They are a bunch of adults.
Yep,
You leave the A off
that's
because
right. That's
you know. But the thing is that I thought, when you were born, I was in high school. At 19, I graduated from 12th grade in 1957.
wow.
Yeah,
2 years
okay.
before I was born. Yeah.
Yes. And what was I learning about? I went to a very, very progressive, very small private school in Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Hmm.
And the school was founded by a German guy named Hans Vader, and he had a very good teacher who was an Englishman named Alex Perkins. And they were both on different sides of World War II. Hans was interned in Hawaii. His father was a Nazi, and he left Germany because he did not agree with what Nazism and National Socialism and stuff. And the school he founded was 3 years after the United Nations was founded. And we used to fly the United Nations flag under the American flag. And emboldened on the wall of the Great Hall of the school was the saying, all men are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And I was learning about John Lewis, and I was learning about, uh, you know, uh, the Norman Pettus Bridge, the lady who sat in the back of the bus, uh,
Hmm.
uh,
Rosa Parks. Yeah.
yeah, Rosa Parks, and little black girls going to school being escorted by white marshals with guns. And I remember Lyndon Johnson signing the Civil Rights Act. I remember the segregation. I remember the young kids, the black kids coming to New York, and during when I met Stevie, a lot of young black men were headed toward Detroit to work in the auto factories to try to escape segregation in the South. And I thought that we were really learning a lot of stuff, and there was flower power, and the owners of Media Sound, where I'd settled, were the ones who financed Woodstock. So uh, there was a sort of a, flower power kind of psychedelic time that was really kind of what the record plant was about when we came out here in '72. That studio was an altar to psychedelic design,
Did you
physically and
see?
in the
Did you
studios.
see the book that came out on about the
I
record plant?
Yeah, I actually contributed many photographs to it.
Did you?
So
Because I
yeah,
interviewed the two authors on that, man. That was a
yeah,
blast of a book to read.
yeah. They worked very hard on it. About Took about 10 years.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, they're both personal friends of mine, and
Oh.
we shared a lot of stories and stuff too, because they really sort of muscled in. But the record plant was a very important part of the creative period of our life. A lot of the work that we did with Steve and Quad happened in the control room we built out there. And who built it? John Stork, who is
Hmm.
still in the business. He's just turned 80. He built Electric Lady for Jimmy. And when we went down to Electric Lady is when John helped us design that big curved cabinet for the synthesizer. And John and I are friends to this day. I actually, for many years, represented his interests out here. as a studio, and supervising the design of recording studios, which are become our concert halls. They're the place where we really need to listen. What happened to music? Benny Goodman, the loudest you could get with a full orchestra, no microphones, maybe about 67, maybe 70 dBs of audio, SPL, sound pressure level. That was loud. But when we were working with Stevie, or you're working with a band like Poison or Guns N' Roses and stuff, what were the levels like in the studio? Maybe 120 dB.
Yeah.
How do you how do you contain that audio so you can hear what you're doing and that there are no standing waves or acoustical problems, especially in a flat space? So the room design became a very important part of how the records were made, and how we functioned in the studio. And the record plant was a very big part of being there when that was going on, because we were busy adding tracks. First, we started with 4 tracks, and we said, "Oh man, that's a lot of tracks." Then it was 16 tracks. Then it was first 12 tracks. The Scully machines were 12 track. Then on 1-inch tape, and then we got the 2-inch tape, and we got to the Ampex MM1000 machine, which was a 2-inch wide tape, a former video editing machine. So, and now, then we went to 32 tracks, and then we jumped off the cliff and started putting stuff on the computer, which was an endless
Infinite.
number of tracks.
Yeah.
But having track limitations are also kind of a healthy way of limiting and not going bonkers, where people have gone now like really jerking off the medium because they have so many tracks that it's no longer a consideration.
Hmm.
So, you know, things are bouncing around, things are changing. I think the change is good. I like change. Uh, I'm not sure I'm keeping up with all of it at 85, but I want to start playing around, just playing around with animating some of the still pictures with soon, that you see, with Chat GPT and stuff, and taking a still photograph. And, you know, I've got like Billy riding on one of his horses. When we were out there, we used to make music at his ranch, and it was
Did you see the
isolated.
documentary on him?
I'm in it.
That's right, you are. I interviewed Paris and Jeannie and Stephanie, that were the producers and directors of that. And in fact, I just did last week, I think, a standalone interview with Jeannie because of all of her documentary work she's done in the music field. And
That's
I
very
don't
well
have that
done.
one out yet. Pardon me?
That's very well done, that
Yeah.
documentary.
Oh, I loved it. I watched it 3 times.
We isolated ourselves on this ranch. I brought the remote truck from the record plant up there, and
Hmm.
it was really very free. There weren't looky-loos looking into the studio, and Billy could really be himself and not worry about his gayness or
Hmm.
any of that stuff. The people who were there knew what was going on, but they were accepted because they were near us. I lived
Hmm.
on the other side of the canyon. I had horses. Billy had horses. I would ride I would ride my horse over to his house to work in the studio and put my horse in this corral. Iron General was my horse. I had a big Mustang with a storybook wide neck, and it was like iron gray. We used to call him Iron General. I used to on occasion ride over there, not all the time, but we had a very wonderful way of making records up there. The smell of horses and marijuana together was
No, I
oh,
haven't smelled that combo yet, but the smell of horses and manure and hay I have. So
so, we made music up there, but with Billy, the music came out of his hands. I mean, I would look down after he like really playing for about a half hour, and the keys would be wet because he sweat through his hands. I used to bring a towel so I would dry the keys off. The water would be pooling up in the thing. But you think about Billy, you think he was playing with the Stones and the Beatles at the same time.
yeah, yeah,
What an amazing man he was, and what a kind soul and
yep.
beautiful human being he was, and how drugs took him.
Yeah.
He didn't really start, it didn't say it really in the film, but Billy really didn't get into trouble very much as long as his mom was around. When his mom passed away, Billy fell off the beam. That's
Yeah.
basically what happened with him. But he was a joy to be with, and I made two records with him, and I really miss him.
I
I really
wonder
do.
what he would have been doing today had he had lived up to this point. Because I mean, his style. I mean, what was the one song you can see it on YouTube? Out of Sight, I think it was. Um, I think I'm saying the wrong title, but just watching the and feeling the energy from it and the whole band together. Just, I mean, it's just like how did people not levitate? You know? So,
Yeah, well, the thing is that he grew up in the church, and the church was
yep,
really a contradiction to his sexuality, and he never really came to terms with it. And
yep,
I think that was a big part of the drug thing.
yep,
And
yep.
I don't know, it's very hard to deal with yourself if you're different. You have to understand that there are going to be people that love you and there are people who are not so much. But Billy was a unique man. He could take any piece of music. He was there, even if he didn't hear the piece first. If he knew where the changes were a little bit, just where it was going, if he knew the verse, he would be able to play the first time he hears it to have stuff going on in the chorus. Or the Stevie had that kind of ability too. Uh, it's not something you can teach. It's
Right,
either there or it isn't,
right.
you know. And I've had the privilege of dealing with people like that. And I know I found my voice by being the man behind the curtain, basically, and getting the technology to manage the technology so it doesn't stand in the way of the art, and that the technology itself was a paintbrush. So now we're here with AI, and it's a new set of paintbrushes,
Yeah,
but it's valid, and we're going to learn how to use it. And in the process, there's going to be a lot of wreckage around the base of the statue as
yeah.
we chisel away at it. But here we are, a
That's a
bunch
good
of
way of putting it.
codgers. Yeah, don't touch that knob. It's more than my job's worth.
Was there anything in the book that was, as you were working on it, that it's going to be a two-part question, that was surprising, and any other part of the book that, as you told the story, was cathartic for you?
One of the most cathartic parts for me was what we never talk about, which is the sailboats. Uh, Going to sea, sailing on a 122-foot long square rig schooner with square rig, forward mast, with her rail buried in the water, going 16 knots in a 35-knot breeze, sailing up the coast of California with a young bunch of students learning to be sailors and to be self-reliant and team players and working for the good of the environment. Al Gore's book was a big part of that for me, about where we're going with global warming. And uh, I thought that I was able to combine all my talents as a filmmaker. The equipment became light and easy to use. It could be all handheld. We didn't need to have a bunch of experts around, sort of like what we're doing with music now. I was
Mm-hmm.
able to do excellent high definition photography and take the message of what sailing, why sailing is still the navies of the world still train their officers on sailing ships for a reason. And that was a very big part of it. And also, I had a full post facility at my disposal because I had built a post studio to remaster feature films that were set up for theaters, for
Mm-hmm.
home theater, and defining listening experience of how speakers should be, at ear level. And I worked with Dr. Floyd Toole and Dr. Sean Olive at JBL, and helping define speaker placement and doing stuff in remixing and remastering soundtracks for home theater, for example, which was a huge step forward in the concept of audio, and especially for motion pictures. So, I've done over 130 of those pictures, but to be able to get on a sailing ship and to be able to do it all, the music, the mixing, the shooting, the storytelling, that was a very big part of it for me. I know it wasn't a great movie in the end, but I was able to use all my tools to try to do some good for the planet directly. Mm-hmm. And for that, I'm thankful that I had that experience.
What was surprising for you in the book while putting it together?
How many different things I've done.
Yeah.
How I was able easily, not so easily, but partially easily, to adapt from one section of my life to the next. I really flunked marriage. That was something I didn't like. I tried it for 6 years. I had heterosexual marriage, and I flunked badly at that because I kept feeling that my wife owned my body and no one else was allowed to touch it except her. Mm-hmm. And that sort of, I don't know, I held a kind of a resentment toward it, but I really sort of buried myself in my work. I don't think I would have gone to the places I went to had I been married more in the 6 years. I think it was focused, and I still am very focused on what I'm doing presently. And right now, I really want to change the world for the better again. We need more people to stand up like Stevie stood up for Martin Luther King. And we need more of that kind of energy. And, just to answer the question, when Stevie and I went our separate ways, me, Malcolm, and Stevie, it was time. And it didn't have anything to do with the music at all. What it had to do with is our business relationship. Is that the first time or the last time that business relationships and music would govern behavior? No. Take a look at what's her name is concertizing all over the place. She couldn't get her music back. What's her name?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Yeah. She re-recorded all her masters because she didn't want to have them owned by somebody else. The business has a lot of nefarious wheelers and dealers hovering around the edge, wheeling and dealing and stuff. And all of that stuff is now being, all the people from my generation are selling their catalogs to the mavens and stuff. But the reality is that there's so much of the new music that in some ways it loses its validity. The new music is yet to be discovered in a lot of ways.
I've got a question for you about all that, though, and I've asked other artists this. As a consumer of music, I'm not a musician. I just interview them.
You like all these toe tappers.
That's right. That's right. I like sitting in the seats watching you guys do what you do. But there's a concern on my part. I think there's an opportunity for it to be done correctly and in a healthy way for all concerned. But for me, I see AI on one hand when you get all these people buying up these huge catalogs and dropping some serious bucks for them. And then you combine that with, they're going to control, is it now going to be that all of a sudden accounting is accurate and honest and truthful? I don't know. But then, the bad thing I see is what are they going to do when they dump that catalog into AI? I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about jazz. Is it going to change music history and how it's perceived in the future after you and I are gone? In that music, is it going to be creating I mean, is Elvis going to be coming out with new albums and not just remastered stuff, or Jimi Hendrix or anything like that? And then on the other side, why in the world can they not use AI to monitor all the platforms and come
They
up with
do
a more equitable way of paying those who are owed
because
money?
they're doing what they can get away with,
There
basically.
you go.
And it was a serious business in the 70s when the black performers were seriously taken advantage of by the white publishers, and mostly independent Jewish guys who had a lot in common with uh, with the black culture. The Jews had the Holocaust, the black folks had slavery, and they were equal sufferers, basically, in a certain way. But the Jews, a black man had to go in to entertain the people through the kitchen and not walk in the front door. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of all of that kind of stuff going on. And Berry Gordy said, I'm going to create a formula for that. And that's four dancing people in sort of the same suits in the background. And then there's somebody singing in the front, a guy or a gal, same band, same six
Hmm.
players in Detroit. And he got a formula, but Steve and uh, really sort of didn't fit that mold anymore.
Yeah.
And he broke out of that thing and that sort of formulaic because he had something important to say.
Do you
And
think that chess records helped the black community? Because I mean, from what I've
yes,
read, it appears that they
yeah.
did. And I had the privilege
Well,
of interviewing Marshall, and he was like right in there on that, saying, "Yeah, man, we." And he
yeah,
just
all the
articulated what you did. Jews and blacks having a common bond there through their suffering.
yeah, there was that, and also there were a lot of clever lawyers who were doing things. There's one guy in particular who's worked with Stevie. His name was Johannan Fagoda, and he had a monster degree from Harvard, a doctorate in jurisprudence. He was a brilliant attorney and a vegetarian with his shirt tails out uh, and his hippiness. And you could always tell he was working on a contract because he'd come with it all and crumpled up and gnawed on the corners and stuff. But he knew the law, and there were a lot of good lawyers who were busy making sure that the rights of people were protected. And that was an important part of during that time because a lot of black artists were really sadly and very badly taken advantage of on their copyrights and stuff. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of suspicion at the majors. I mean, Columbia used to call R&B. Who invented that term? A guy at Atlantic Records invented the term R&B. Before that, it was called race music.
Yeah.
So, I think it was Jerry Wexler came up with that. Um, so, we've come a long way in terms of the color barriers no longer exist. There's a lot of anger in black music now, and especially with rap and
Yeah.
gangsters and sex orgies and lube and what's his name there and all his
Puff Daddy.
nefarious
Yeah.
Puff Daddy and his wife Puff Mommy. You know, I um, we're going through some really radical changes in our culture. I don't
We are.
know if I'm going to be around to see much of it, but I just have to be on the ride. As long as I can have my sensibilities, I'm not in some sort of a wheelchair wrapped in a sheet in the corner of a hallway with a catheter and drooling and stuff. I uh, I will keep moving forward, and I hope when my time comes, I go out of the studio feet first.
Yeah.
I'm I just want to talk about my times and see what my lessons learned can do for the next generation of
Well, I
people.
think this book is perfect for that. And what do you, if you were to sum it all up into one, and I think there's a lot of messages in your book, but if you were today, the way you feel today, somebody watching this interview, they're hearing us talk, what would you tell them you hope they get from your book? One one key message.
Live your life, learn, and keep your mind open to change. I
Hmm.
think are the things I would do. And if you're talented, touch your heart and touch your mind and use your talent for good. Those
I
are the
agree.
things, you get to a place in life, and I'm at that place now where you have to learn and understand that it's time to give it away. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I did with the book.
Yeah. Well, it's a excellent book. I don't have a hard copy yet. In fact, what I'd love to do, if there's a way to buy it directly from you so you can sign it. I love collecting autograph books and have a great collection of them as well as albums.
I'd have to
But
give you a thumbprint in blood.
I'll
I,
take it.
I'm loving it. Thanks so much for the brilliant wallpaper
You're
behind us.
you're welcome to it. I'll send it to you so you can use it if you want. It's a simple thing to throw behind you on, virtually. So
I'm good, but I have somebody who handles all that stuff. I'm gonna write another book, I think. I want to write something about AI. I'll tell you what I think AI is missing. It's missing friction. It's too self-centered, one person, like I say, talking to a vending machine on one hand. When musicians go in the studio, there's friction and negotiation between the drummer and the bass player and the guitar player and the singer. They go in there and they work out their business together and say, "Oh no, this part, try this, try that, let's do this, let's." There's a negotiation that goes on. It's equal. Everybody has their own specialty, different instruments and stuff. But somewhere along that negotiation turns into a piece of music.
yeah,
And I think that when it becomes everything becomes so solistic, solo person doing everything, that it's like writing movie scores. It's sort of like the music becomes an underscore, whereas negotiating piece is more of a song. It has a different kind of energy, and I think that's what AI is missing is that friction. I think we
yeah.
need a. I
Needs to
think
be
we
more
need.
collaborative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
got it.
agree. I
It's
agree.
been a distinct pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise.
It's
Likewise. I would love to talk to you again sometime, and maybe the opportunity can avail itself, especially if you do the book on AI. But as I do this, I find myself knowing and meeting and developing at least a very distant relationship with a lot of different people in this industry, and I love that part of what I do. But if we can ever work together again on something like this, I'd love to. My door is always open to you, and
if
um,
both in both ways. It's been very enjoyable uh, speaking with you today, and I hope you got something good. You
I
can
did.
edit this thing. You can edit this thing to pieces because you got to come up with only 10 minutes worth. So
Well, that's what they tell me. But you know what, Robert? I'm one of those guys that's like, what's said? I mean, if something's said off the record, I edit out. I'm a long form content creator in a short attention span society. So I do create reels. I create things that I hope will entice people to listen, but I do what I do for the love of it. I'm not making much money at it at all. My fiance's son, he's making boatloads of money because of his golden retriever. And he's known all over the world. And he was in New York City with family and without the dogs. And a waitress come up to him and said, "Are you Teddy's dad?" I mean, I love it
the
because
guy
I'm learning from
Carney,
him.
the
Huh?
Kane, the guy Kane has a chicken place.
Yeah.
Kane, you know that
Yep.
Kane's. Yep, they got it down there, right? Where
Yep.
you are.
Yep. They sure do.
It's good
So
food. I like it.
Yeah, it is. Very good. Well, man, if you're out this way, let me know, and it'd be an honor to come up and shake your hand, and we'll get a selfie together or something. But I'm serious. If there's anything I can ever do to help you out, Robert, let me know, and we'll set one of these up. And what?
You've just done it. Doing this thing with you is a big help to spreading the word about my book, and that's a good thing.
I'm glad to do it.
It's not just about the money. It's about doing something good for the culture. That's
exactly
how I think.
Getting the word out.
Yeah, it's time to.
It's an important book you've written. It really is.
Well, I just want to give it away. That's the next part of it. And my dog wants to go out badly, so I'm going to sign off.
All right, my friend. Thanks for your time, and
God bless. God bless, and good luck, and stay safe.
You too, sir. Take care. Bye-bye. This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song for Boomerocity is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quentin Hope. Quentin is spelled Quinten, and Hope is H-O-P as in Paul, E. And you can find out more about Quentin Hope and his music at quintenhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2026.